What is going on, party people? I'm Jory Goodman, the Time Teller. So, today we're going to be talking about an episode that definitely is catered towards new watch collectors or just people who are very interested in learning something about horological history. Guys, I have a full playlist on videos for new watch collectors. These are kind of like episodes that I wish I had when I first started watch collecting. You can click, it's going to be on that corner. I believe there's going to be a pop-up that shows up and you can just click it and just binge watch that playlist. But today, we're going to be talking about a misnomer, a misconception, just a big overall error when people are recalling the specific bit of horological history. And it's funny because I think I'm guilty of this as well in some respects. A lot of what we remember and recall is really just things that we've heard and we repeat, right? It's like this ongoing game of telephone. And a lot of us don't care to really look to see if the things we're saying and the things we heard are true and correct. You know, it's much easier just to listen to something and be like, oh, okay, cool, and then repeat it. But to really do the work to research what you're saying, that takes a little bit more effort. Thankfully, we have people like Periscope, this just wealth of information online. He's just this orological wizard who I follow and I speak to, and I've learned a lot. He posted something today on Instagram that was very interesting about the expedition to Everest in 1953. Now, before we go any further, I am going to tell the time. It is 12:28 p.m. Let's get down to business. Now, I am wearing a watch that is somewhat relevant to today's episode. I'm wearing a Rolex Explorer 2 16570. Now, this is the only Rolex that I own that is part of the Explorer series. Now, this is an Explorer 2. This isn't an Explorer, right? This is a little bit bigger than the original Explorers. It has a little bit more complications, with the date complication and the GMT. But it is still one of Rolex's field watches. And we could argue it's a successor to the original Explorers, even though Rolex still makes both of them, the Explorers and the Explorer 2s. Anyway, what am I getting at? If you ask most watch nerds which watch summited Mount Everest, they will tell you a Rolex Explorer. I've seen this firsthand. You're like, which watch climbed Mount Everest? They'll be like, oh, the Explorer, right? It's like a 1016 or something. And here's the thing, I love the Rolex 1016. This is like definitely on my grail list. 369 dial, looks incredibly Rolex with the oyster case and crown. We have the Mercedes hand, and it looks incredible, right? This is like the quintessential Rolex Explorer. No bells and whistles, just a tough watch, versatile, ready to rock. I love it. These are very, very expensive, but still not like unattainable, just pretty expensive. Now, this is incorrect. All right, this is not the watch that Sir Edmund Hillary wore to summit Mount Everest. Now, according to Hodinkee, this is the watch that Sir Edmund Hillary wore when he peaked Mount Everest. This is a Rolex 6098, I believe. So in 1953, the not yet Sir Edmund Hillary became the first man to summit Mount Everest along with expedition partner Tenzing Norgay. He did so with a Rolex on his wrist, an Oyster Perpetual that would prove to be the ancestor of the Explorer. So this is like the proto-Explorer, right? We don't see the 369 dial. It's a white dial. Still really, very, very Rolex with the oyster case and crown. Now, this is an older article. This is from 2013. But Hodinke's wrong. And it's interesting. I don't know if they corrected this. Let's look at the... So they didn't edit this. And this is not corrected at all. But this is apparently not the watch that Sir Edmund Hillary wore to peak Mount Everest. And I can prove that because look at these two things that were compiled. So here, from the Horological Journal, November 1953, we can see... It's highlighted here, speaking of Sir Edmund Hillary. He spoke very highly of the Rolex and the fact that it remained behind in the comparative safety of the base camp. It goes on, It was no reflection on the watch, but simply a common sense precaution to keep one in reserve and to avoid any possible chance of getting both smashed at the same time, right? So he had two watches on him. Redundancy. This is smart. However, this is stated in Horological Journal, November 1953, that he left the Rolex behind. So which watch did he carry? Tenzing carried a single watch in his own of unrecorded make. So it is said he wore a different Rolex, but we're not talking about yet. We're not talking about that yet. Excuse me. I'm so excited about giving you this information you've never heard of that I'm kind of slurring my words here. So Sir Edmund Hillary left the Rolex behind at base camp so he wouldn't break two watches potentially. Which watch did he wear when he went to summit Mount Everest? Well, it was actually this. A Smith's Deluxe. All right? This does not have a 369 dial. This has small seconds, and you can see here, made in England. You can see full Arabic dial, kind of a white, not quite linen, but we'll call this like a grain dial, syringe hands. Another kind of simple field watch aside from it not having a second hand on the spindle, but, you know, a small seconds. And we actually have more information thanks to Periscope. We can see this. Smith's Deluxe watches officially selected by the British Everest Expedition. Quote, I carried your watch to the summit. It worked perfectly. Smith's was the only watch worn by Sir Edmund Hillary. So that last statement was maybe a bit of an exaggeration. He did wear a Rolex, but he didn't summit with the Rolex. So I guess it is the only watch he wore to summit Everest, the Smith's Deluxe. And it's funny because Rolex hasn't been too happy with Smith's. I don't know if it's because of this, that, you know, Smith's really was the only one that summited Everest with Sir Edmund Hillary. Or maybe it's this. You see this 369 dial? 1016? Well, Smith's went on to produce their Smith's Everest series, and you can see 369 dial Mercedes hands. This is, I mean, you can't argue that this is not influenced heavily by the Rolex 1016. I mean, look at these two watches. Now, these are hard to find still because Smith's went defunct, and a gentleman brought back the brand, and you apparently have to email him to get a Smith's watch. It's not as easy as putting a credit card into a website, but these are still much more attainable than a Rolex 1016 and still less expensive than a Rolex Explorer. So you got options, and this is definitely a watch with some heritage. You know, Smith's truly did climb Mount Everest, and I guess they kind of took the crown, so to speak, from Rolex in this respect. But I just wanted to not bash Rolex because, again, I'm wearing a Rolex right now. I absolutely love the 1016. I love the history of the 1016, but I definitely want a Smith's. I want a Smith's now. Again, because they have very interesting history. And if I could find a Smith's Deluxe in good working order for a reasonable price, that would be incredible, because this is truly a watch that summited Mount Everest. Now, if you want to know about another watch that climbed Mount Everest, you can take a look at the Time Teller channel, and I'm going to Google myself. Oh my God. Time Teller. My bad, guys. My bad. If you go here to my website, I'm going to show you something. And you search. Again, here are playlists. So we have State of the Collection 2020, Everyday Watches, Chronographs, T3 Watch Rants, videos for new collectors. That's the one that you should be watching right now, if I say so myself. Type in Everest. I believe it'll show up. So if you type in Everest and you click this, no one watched this episode. Okay? 4,000 views 5 years ago. We're going to take this down. We don't need an ad. But this is a very interesting episode. Oh my gosh, look at me. Look at me. I didn't have an editor. I was filming on a Nikon Coolpix. I did not know what the heck I was doing. Give me a break, guys. But this is another watch that people don't know climbed Mount Everest, and I own it. So check out this episode. I'll link this episode in the description below, and I want you to leave a comment saying, I climbed this channel. Okay, I climbed this channel, because then I know that you really did explore and climb around my channel. So check out that episode, leave a comment, and let me know what you think about that watch. I will catch you on the next one. Guys, thank you for supporting me here and everywhere on social media, on Instagram at The Simple Consultant, the channel memberships, just everywhere. I love you. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay blessed. I'm Jory Goodman, the Time Teller, and always remember, I didn't invent time. I just tell it. All right, guys, I will catch you on the next episode.